The underlying premise of this memoir is that we live for a while and then we die. It matters to us in ways that it does not to other creatures. What is this mattering? We want our lives to have meaning. Well, calm too is a gesture in the direction of a meaningful life. We are constantly reminded about dharma, our duty to others. The thought escapes us that calm is also a duty to ourselves. This memoir is a reminder that calm is indeed to realize our capacity for living a flourishing life. Socrates pointed out that we are unique among creatures in being able to address this question, how shall I live? This question was so important that he claimed that the examined life is not worth living. Unexamined life is not worth living. Ironically, the citizens of Athens put him to death for forcing them to think about the meaning of their lives. This memoir attempts the same project with the hope that Socrates' tragic fate will not befall me. Now we come to the chapter 1. Calm strikes early. The wondrous world of calm optimism. So there is a quote from Marcel Proust. I quote, "Desire is powerful indeed, it engenders belief." Unquote. I remember waking up suddenly on a frosty day just after dawn. I was 4 and only half awake. It had been raining, and along with the wetness, there was a rawness in the air. I could hear the wind blow. I ran to my mother's bed. She stretched her arms, and I nestled by her side. She felt my body and pressed me close to her. "Did you have a bad dream, Amar?" she asked. I leaned towards her, sought her heat, and placed my head against her. I felt the smell of her skin in her big bed with her soft arms around me. Before I could answer, I was blissfully asleep. So much happiness did I feel from her sensual warmth that day that I got into the habit of jumping into my mother's bed whenever I could. I would lose myself in her body's peculiar aroma of melted butter. Half awake and half asleep, I would rub myself against her. One day she became aware of what I was doing and she admonished me gently. She told my father, and he was not pleased. "It's not healthy for a boy who is almost 5 to sleep with his mother," he told her. He wanted me to learn to grow up independent. She was more accepting, however, protesting that it was a natural and innocent thing. But eventually she gave in, and the intimacy between mother and son came to an end. I felt resentful for months. Another memory of my childhood is of spending time mostly with myself. I would sometimes miss my mother, and I remember searching all over the house for her. I recall feeling an aching absence. When told that she was away at the bazaar or at neighbor's house, I would grow anxious. I was loneliest at night when I was sent to bed early, and I spent what seemed like hours feeling uneasy and restless on my pillow. Later, as I grew up, I was relieved to learn that I was not alone in my anxiety. I felt reassured when I read about the young narrator Marcel in Proust's novel Remembrance of Things Past, who used to wait longingly for his mother to come and give him a good night kiss. When she finally came and kissed him, he would feel comforted, but the effect was temporary, for he would soon be filled with pain at the thought of her imminent departure. So much so that I reached the point of hoping that this goodnight kiss, which I loved so much, would come as late as possible, so as to prolong the time of respite during which Mama would not yet have appeared. On another occasion, he dozed off while reading a book and longing for her. He awakens half an hour later to find the book still in his hands, but there is no sight of his mother. Unable to sleep, he goes and waits on the staircase landing, and this is where his parents find him dozing. Fearing punishment, he thinks, too late, my mother is upon me. Instinctively, I murmured, though no one heard me, quote, I am done for, unquote. But his normally stern but his normally stern father is filled with sympathy and the sight of his vulnerable son and suggests to his wife to spend the night with the child. This is at the beginning of Prost's extraordinary, intimate, and seductive 7 volume novel. Ever since childhood, I have lived with this nagging feeling of loneliness. It is different from solitude, which I have always found to be restful and even creative. Perhaps because solitude is chosen while loneliness is not. My loneliness is a restless longing, and it never seems to go away. It is there even when I am with someone or when I am in a group, and especially when I am in a crowd. In India, of course, people are hardly alone, and if you do find someone who is habitually alone, you feel pity for them. I wonder if the extreme pleasure of calm is meant to overcome this feeling of loneliness, or at least is a recompense for it. If calm strikes early in human life, it also emerges early in primeval time in a civilization. My grandmother wore the softest saris, and as I was feeling the smoothness of the cotton fabric one morning, she casually mentioned that in the beginning there was nothing in the universe, only darkness. The cosmos was created from the seed of calm, desire, in the mind of the One. When I went to the university, I discovered the famous hymn of creation in the Rig Veda, and is confirmed what she had said. I quote, in the beginning, desire descends on it. That was the primal seed, born of the mind. Unquote. Calm is a masculine noun, and in this speculative hymn is the first allusion to the cosmogonic function of desire. Although it does not explain which causes what, it does suggest that desire was the first act of consciousness and links cosmic desire to the great heat of tapas, the generative heat of sexuality and consciousness. Calm can also mean pleasure, suggesting that desire is about anticipation and pleasure is the emotional satisfaction from achieving the desired object. It recognizes as well that desire leads to intention and intention leads to action. So, before one can act, one must have the desire and the intention to act. You wouldn't wake up in the morning without desire, my grandmother said, while she was explaining that the softness of her cotton saris came from years of washing. In cosmic terms, calm's great heat is the primal biological energy linked to pran, the life force. Indians had understood early on that desire is everything. Without it, human beings are nothing. The living cell would fall apart without the animating principle of calm. It is the wellspring of all activity. A few centuries after the Rig Veda came the Atharva Veda, and it raised calm to the status of something resembling a creator god who lorded over the other deities. And this god felt lonely and wanted a companion, since it was as large as a man and a woman in close embrace. It split its body into two, giving rise to men and women. I have thought about this primordial division and felt that the poet was reminding us about the fundamental loneliness of the human condition. To overcome it, the primordial man copulated with the women after the splitting, and this suggests to me that the intimacy of calm helps us to surmount some of our primal loneliness. A kiss, an embrace, as is thrilling because it helps to conquer our feeling of isolation in an alien, anonymous world. And what can we infer about a civilization that regards everything as beginning with calm, unlike, for example, the Judeo Christian tradition, where in the beginning was light when God said, "Let there be light"? If the Hindu cosmos is born from calm, I ask myself, what is the significance of the fact that this primal biological energy is at the origin of my civilization? As a child, I asked my grandmother, what was there in the void before calm? But she thought I was just being naughty. Calm is a serious subject of inquiry in many great texts, the Vedas, the Brahmans, and the pioneering philosophical mental experiments called Upanishads. All of them are early striving of beings to understand the nature of the world and of the self. The epic Mahabharata devotes 40 long chapters to grasp calm's nature. All this earnest questioning happened well before Vatsayan decided to compile the exquisite Kama Sutra. He understood that calm is not merely a natural energy, it is also an art to be cultivated. Calm is used both in sexual and asexual contexts. In the ancient texts, and it carries connotations of action, creation, and procreation. Early on, it seems ancient Indians had understood that this divine energy, also called Shakti, is the source of the sexual drive and the force behind the life instinct. And this happened thousands of years before Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. The Rig Veda says in another creation myth that the gods made a sacrifice of Purush, the cosmic person, at the beginning of time. Into a fire altar, flutes, mantras, and other offerings were made. Before being offered to Agni, the god of fire, Purush gave rise to his feminine self, Viraj, out of his own being, and was then sacrificed and ritually dismembered. Through the sacrifice, Purush became the universe, and his limbs became the sun, the moon, stars, animals, plants, and human beings. This was the primordial sexual act that gave rise to the cosmos. The fire ritual linked human beings to the divine and ensured their perpetuation. The Upanishads state that man is made of desire and explain that the ritual sacrifice replicates the sexual act as the fluid is offered into the fires of the womb. Thus, calm has the capacity to beget life. There are other more charming Hindu myths of creation, but now that I am in my old age, I am especially drawn to the ones related to calm. I feel compelled to make some sort of peace with my restless mind, and that has troubled me all my life with the vexatious problems of desire. Even today, there are annoyances that refuse to go away and continue to color insistently the recollections of my early days.